I had a completely different video planned out, and I threw it out like old leftovers when this happened.
That's it. That's my intro.
Hi, I'm Amanda, and you're watching Swell Entertainment, and today I'm wearing my gold circle glasses, mainly because they kind of make me feel like an academic, and I'm cosplaying as one today. I am not well-versed. I am not an authority on nearly anything we are talking about today. Not at all. I am just an obsessive and I'm nosy and I like getting involved in things that I don't really belong in. But basically today we are talking about Demi Lovato and how they purchased artifacts, okay, that were supposedly from Egypt, and they're probably fake or stolen. It seems to be now that the general consensus is that these are fake artifacts. But that's what we're talking about today. And so I heard about this through TikTok. Do I follow Demi on Instagram? I don't remember. But that's where this was posted about on their story. And so the videos and things like that I'm going to be talking about, I don't have the originals too. I only have the videos that people put in their own videos of screen recordings and things like that, which I will be sharing with you.
Okay, I'm so excited. Some really incredible things came in the mail today. These are ancient Egyptian artifacts, and I got them from Natalie's dad at museumsurplus.com. These are my certificates of authenticity. Some of these pieces are literally thousands of years old. Like, what? What? My mind is literally blown right now, and I'm so excited. Wow.
I am obsessed with this, okay? And not in a good way. I'm obsessed with this in the same way that I kind of became obsessed with the Jons Bones situation, where I'm like, this is a thing that happens, but also just kind of learning more for myself, for my own knowledge of a topic, like the efficacies of private ownership of antiquities, or in the case of the Jons Bones situation, human remains, human osteology, as they kept calling it on their website, because that somehow makes it better. Everyone has been asking me for another video in the veins of eels don't bone or dinosaurs on the moon. And this video is not going to be like that, because in those videos, I just kind of deep dive on random scientific facts / theories / things that are being shared. And I overanalyze them as someone who has no business overanalyzing those topics. I have an associate's degree in English. I don't, I'm barely qualified to make the rest of the videos I'm just a chick on the internet with a camera. It's not that funny. Why am I laughing so hard? Maybe this will be my new series with the gold glasses of me being like, hi. Here's my thoughts on something I have no business sharing them. I don't know. I think some people have too much money. And again, what you do with your money is partially up to you. But a big portion of what I like my content to be, or at least what I wanted it to originally be, is trying to make sure that if you guys are going to buy something, to kind of just ask your own questions on things and do your own research before you just become a mindless consumer. You know, I become a professional consumer / internet anthropologist for you so that you can hopefully learn from my mistakes or from my poor money choices or whatever and make better choices for yourself. And so I'm sure there are people out there like me who are fascinated / had a obsession with various ancient societies and things like that, when societies is not the right word. Ancient cultures, that's it. I was obsessed with ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, all of that. And so history is something that I am fascinated by. And it's like more like a hobby for me. Yeah, I would say history and things like that is kind of like a little hobby for me. And I follow various, trends on Twitter, like the archaeology trend and paleontology trend and geology trend, for no particular reason other than the fact that they show me pretty pictures of things mainly, and various finds and stuff. And again, I've mentioned previously that the current state of archaeology and things like that, there is the ongoing debate that's always going to be going, that it is essentially still grave robbing, and that it's not right to take these items from their home countries or the countries that they are found to bring to expensive museums in other countries where these people cannot go and see their own history. And it's, there's this whole thing about repatriating to the original countries of origin and things like that. And we're going to touch on that a little bit in this because we talk about provenance of these artifacts that Demi bought, okay? And the certificates of authenticity that came with them. And I have forged better documents than this. Okay. I in high school, I've forged better documents than this. I mean, this is just, if someone handed me these certificate of authenticities, I would ask what child made them because they look incredibly fake, in my opinion. And it seems to be the general consensus that whether these are fake to add to the legitimacy of these fake artifacts, or they are to add to the legitimacy to try and make these potentially stolen or looted items more. I hate my brain right now. Oh my God. Legitimate. There it is. Okay. We're getting better, working on it. For those of you that are unaware, I had COVID back in January, and the memory issues from that have not left me. It's infuriating. So Demi put on their Instagram story this video, and this video is recorded by Aaron L. Thompson, or Art Crime Prof on Twitter. And we're going to talk more about them, but this is from their thread on the instance on Twitter from this website called museumsurplus.com. They captioned the video, "Starting my own museum, y'all." So the original concern was that these were stolen artifacts, okay? Because there's a lot of looting that has been happening in Egypt forever. And so it seems that more recently, because of the ongoing, I don't want to get this wrong. So Peter Campbell on Twitter broke this down very well. And there are certain things in this where it's going to seem like I'm just reiterating what someone else is saying. And that's because there are people who are authorities on this subject, and I am not. So Peter is an archaeologist seeking answers about our past, present, and future, lecturer in cultural heritage under threat and Cranefield Uni. So he was talking about how they're doing a international heritage crime course that week that this all happened. So he said, it's not illegal to own old things. The illegal antiquities trade is valued at $2 billion annually. However, there is a significant trade in illicit antiquities, which draws on looted materials from Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Italy, etc. And within that trade is a trade in fakes and forgeries. International markets have seen an influx of looted artifacts from Iraq and Syria following the U.S. invasion of Daesh. That's not the right. I'm saying that wrong. Invasion and Daesh. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. The U.S. invasion and Daesh artifacts like cuneiform tablets. Following the Arab Spring, widespread looting in Egypt led to an influx of Egyptian artifacts onto the market. Basically, my understanding is that why there is a higher risk of something like what Demi got being stolen or looted is because it's portable. It's not a giant statue. Everything that they got could literally sit on like this much state of table. That's portable. That's something you can grab and go and then sell. So that's where already you kind of got to be a little more thorough in your research of the I feel weird calling them products, but that's what this is being treated like, because Demi was able to go and purchase this from this site, which then in this case, the antiquities or the potential forgeries are considered the product. So you have to do your research when you are buying anything, but especially when there's something that could potentially have a very, loosely known origin, you kind of got to do more research on your own part, especially when it's something like this, when there is an influx of forgeries and stolen artifacts out of these areas, because this is something that's portable. This is something that someone can go in and take and then do with what they will, So basically, there's two dates that are important for this. There's 1970 and 1869. One of the main issues with Demi's purchase is that the certificate of authenticity does not have a provenance. Okay, and I've talked about provenance previously when I did the Jons Bones videos, and we'll talk more about that later when we're talking about, surrendering these things to museums, like some people have been suggesting that Demi do. If it's a legally obtained item, then it will have originally been found, my understanding, from pre-1970 for it to be legally obtained or legally privately owned. My understanding. So here, Again, back to Peter Campbell. Generally, any post-1970 trafficking of cultural heritage is illegal. So like artifacts, antiquities, things like that. The date of the UNESCO Convention on the Means of Prohibiting and Preventing the Illicit Import, Export, and Transfer of Ownership of Cultural Property. But it's earlier for nations like Egypt with protective laws. This generally requires any artifacts being sold to have a pre-1970 provenance, and for Egypt specifically, earlier than 1869 is when it has to have been like removed from the area or originally discovered, dug up. Anyone buying antiquity should therefore conduct due diligence before they purchase an object. You don't want to buy something that has been looted recently or a fake. The whole point of the why the fake argument is good or bad or whatever. And some people are like, well, if it's a fake, who cares? They lost their money. Demi lost money. Again, owning a fake item that's an antiquity is not illegal. That's my understanding based on everything. It's my understanding that purchasing a fake antiquity is not illegal. However, when you convince yourself or you convince your audience that something is real, whether you believe it or not, you are then kind of making a trend potentially or a fad of buying antiquities. Not to say that that's exactly what Demi has done, but then there's also a level of responsibility when you are having an audience, when you're someone like Demi that has a, massive following and things like that, like talking about I'm going to start my own museum and things like that and buying private, there's a whole bunch of people who own dinosaur skulls. I could do a whole nother video on that of just celebrities that own T-Rex skulls. Demi would not be the first person to have bought fake and or stolen artifacts. I believe it was Nicolas Cage who years ago found out that he had purchased, I believe, stolen artifacts. And he returned them. And obviously, I don't believe he got any of that money back, which good for him for returning them. I don't know. When you spend money on things, like this is like Logan Paul, this is so not the same thing, but Logan Paul allegedly losing $3 million on fake rare Pokemon cards. Would you not do your research? Like if you have that much money, would you not hire the best expert to authenticate something for you, whether it's an artifact or a fucking Pokemon card? Ugh, people stress me out with the way they spend money. Anyway, so again, here's a more detailed list on what consists of a provenance. I keep saying Providence. It's Provenance. There's no D in there. I'm just dumb. Due diligence with an object's provenance consists of its ownership history. Did it enter the market before the cutoff date? Origin, find spot, where was the dig site, where was it found? Description of the object, does the ownership papers match the object in front of you or could it have been switched, etc. Which brings me to the paperwork accompanies Demi's purchases. I have never seen provenance like this. None of the critical information is included. Were these exported in 1869 or last year? Again, these are supposedly coming out of Egypt, the items that Demi has recently purchased. Peter also mentions that, where are the copies of the export permits? Who owned them previously? There should be, again, a chain of custody for an antiquity so you know how it was obtained, who had it last, why is there still eyeliner on my hand? There's things that you need to know when you're dealing with something like this. And then there's also a lifetime guarantee on this, which I do think is funny. There's a variety of fonts happening. There's a blue bubble border, photos of the various antiquities, which, the photos are fine. But again, these are just like to say that this is a certificate of authenticity. That doesn't mean anything unless there's something to authenticate the item. Does that make, I don't know if I'm explaining this well at all, but Peter goes on to talk about the efficacy of privately owning a piece of heritage from one of these countries and how ancient Egyptian and Iraqi artifacts have been, exploited from European imperialism throughout time. And so goes on to say, you should ask yourself, why should I be able to own this? What path did it take to get here? Were people exploited or killed for it to get here? Like diamonds, there are blood antiquities, and each artifact needs proof it's ethical. Aaron L. Thompson, who I shared the original video for, is actually an art crime professor. Why did no one tell me that was a job? I'm a YouTuber and I could have been a professor of art crime. Are you kidding me? Anyway, Aaron wrote an article for Sections Daily News. Don't buy Egyptian antiquities, even if they're real. And did a full article. This is published last August, in 2021, talking about various antiquities and things like that. And even if you can kind of prove whether they're real or fake, you don't know how well it was obtained, especially in current day. This particular purchase from Demi is probably fake. There's a lot of consistencies in the wear and tear of the antiquities that people see in forgeries, because they assume that, oh, if we make it look smooth and run down, then they're going to think it came out of the dirt and that it's thousands of years old. I was especially worried 3 years ago when I spotted a listing for an ancient Assyrian sculpture on the website of the New York City-based Sidi Gallery. These magnificent sculptures from Iraq are so rare that scholars like me know each and every example, but here's one I had never seen before. The gallery's listing did not mention that the sculpture had the extensive paper trail needed to provide it had left Iraq legally. I thought that must have been recently looted. In war-torn Iraq, looters have been busy destroying the past and smuggling out stolen cultural heritage to sell to foreign collectors. The profits from this looting sometimes fund militant groups, putting Iraq's future as well as its past in danger. How had one of these precious artifacts ended up for sale a few blocks away from the Empire State Building? But once I zoomed in on the website's pictures, I stopped worrying that the sculpture had been ripped from an Iraqi archaeological site. Beneath various ancient-looking incrustations stuck to the stone, the carving of a winged man was crude. Genuine Assyrian sculptures are minutely detailed and realistic. Feathers on the sculpture only had a few lines, as if the carver's arm had gotten tired, and the figure's toes end in wavy, bizarre lines. It was a fake. What I gathered from this is that a lot of forgerers, when it comes to ancient antiquities, forget something that I think would be important I feel like I'm giving advice to forgers. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. My point is that time may wear down details, but the details were still once there, okay? They don't just disappear. They were there at one point, and then they started waning away from time. I don't know why I'm making this hand movement, but time doesn't just erase things or make them smooth or cover them in dirt and mud and crust. And so that's what Aaron is saying here, is that the details that would be there for something like this aren't there, and that right off the bat, you know it's a fake. And again, I am not sitting here and telling you to become experts in identifying stolen or fake artifacts. I'm saying that there is steps that you can take to verify things or to make proper decisions if you are going to purchase something online for a private collection. And honestly, I'm not super worried about you guys purchasing things. Not that I don't think that some of you don't have a shit ton of money, but I don't think any of you have Demi Lovato money. I'm not saying that to insult you. I just think that if you're watching my content, you probably don't have Demi Lovato money, okay? And then in August, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office found that this sculpture was far from the only fake for sale at the Sidi Gallery. Investigators say they found thousands of fake antiquities in the gallery's backrooms, along with a belt sander used to distress objects strategically, and mud-like putties used to make them look like they had spent millennia underground. The DA's office said the gallery's owner, Meredad Sidi, appeared to be one of the biggest sellers of fake antiquities in America. Some of these fakes went for tens of thousands of dollars. One of the most bizarre was an ancient Egyptian body part, a supposedly mummified erect penis, complete with testicles, for a mere $15,000. But most of the gallery's items were, as their advertisements put it, sold for wholesale prices. For $100 or so, you could have purchased what you thought was a piece of the past from Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Nepal, India, or Central America, all places trying desperately to fight the looting of archaeological sites. This article goes on to talk about why you should care about the purchase and sale of fake antiquities, because I'm sure you're wondering, okay, it's fake, and who cares? Every sale of a fake antiquity encourages the black market in looted heritage. If you buy an artifact without knowing exactly where it came from, when it left its country of origin, or how it entered the United States, you aren't asking enough questions. You might be fooled into buying a tourist figurine someone has dipped in spackle, or you might be participating in a black market that steals our global heritage. When we catch dealers in looted antiquities, we typically often also find fakes in their storerooms. The forgeries help hide the genuine artifacts and bump up their profit margins. Think of fake antiquities as the filler mixed into illegal drugs. You can't sell one without the other. Even the Sidi Gallery seems to have mixed fake with some real but horrific sales. Just a few months ago, when I checked their website during my periodic monitoring, they were advertising a Mongolian skull as a bargain lot since it was in good condition, but with some missing teeth. You shouldn't be able to buy someone's ancestor's skull online. We've talked about this. The same goes for looted antiquities or the fake antiquities that help support the market for genuine black market items. I'll link that article down below. But that kind of goes back to talking about, again, I feel like there's a lot of overlap here with the Jons Bones situation because, again, the way that Jons Bones, the company, and John himself were able to operate, and I believe still operate, is that they claimed that they helped legitimize, they were the middleman, okay? So if someone like, I believe the example he used was this one articulated skeleton that a family had in their house as like a decoration that the kids played with as a toy because the dad was a doctor or something and had gotten it from a medical school or something like that. And they had a new baby. The baby didn't like the skeleton, so they were trying to get rid of it. But the problem with that is that, again, it was privately owned. They didn't have the necessary paperwork, the provenance for the skeleton, so they couldn't give it to a medical school. Because, again, there was also wear and tear because they were just letting their children play with someone's skeleton. Choices were made that I would not, but and then they didn't have the proper paperwork and there was wear and tear, so they couldn't just give it to a museum. And so John's thing was that they kind of helped give legitimacy to these items because, it goes through Jons Bones. They're a seller of osteology. We can provide paperwork for it. I explained it like this was money laundering for human osteology is how I explained it in my video. I'm like, this sounds like you are forcing, like you are legitimizing potentially questionably attained human remains, human bones. This is not the same thing because, again, it was like, hey, sell us your bones and then, we'll resell them, but you'll get some money for your bones. Again, it felt like money laundering, but for bones. And what happens if, again, to someone's private collection, to a museum, can they then sell to a museum? The market here is not for selling them to museum or legitimizing them into the bone trade like Jons Bones is doing or museum. Another TikToker did a good video series, a 3-part series about, hey, if you find something, because I believe someone shared with them that they had gone to an antique store and bought something. And then as they were looking into it later on, they thought, this may be something that I should not have. And this is something that should be in a museum. And the process that should go. She talks about how not every item in a museum is gained legally or ethically. We know that. In an earlier part of her series, she talked about, Indiana Jones' whole thing was like he was getting objects from various countries and on his various adventures and expeditions for museums. That's not legal. That's not how that would be done. But, fiction. Who am I kidding? Those movies are fucking rad. But she suggested if you find something that you believe to be a legitimate antiquity that you should take photos of it and email it to the museums. You shouldn't just walk in with it because there's the chance that they'll just take it and do nothing with it. You don't have proof of it that as well. It's like the same thing with Jons Bones situation. You can't just give the bone that you thought you found to a museum because there's no proof of how it was obtained. There's no provenance again. And if you find something, if you buy it from a corner antique store, they're probably not going to get a provenance or a certificate of authenticity or anything. Why do we give so much credence to certificate of authenticities? I can make one on my computer right now. I can authenticate that this Swell plushie is mine because it has a paint stripe on it because it was on my desk. I'm currently obsessed with paint by numbers as an offline hobby. And I am messy. I can authenticate that this is but does that give this inherent value? Would that stop someone from making the same paint line on another plushie, because there's a lot of these, and making their own certificate? It's a piece of paper, like a marriage license. No one get mad at me. Back to the topic of Demi Lovato's items, the determination that some of these are fake. Erin also made her own Twitter thread talking about this stuff. These are not so much cuneiform tablets as pre-gnawed dog biscuits. Also, you better hope they're fakes. Genuine tablets like this have frequently been looted from Iraq, including to support insurgent groups like ISIS. Again, I am not an expert in this, but looking at this, I would be like, yeah, that looks right. That looks legitimate. It looks like a cuneiform tablet, because I don't know. I mean, who wouldn't trust a certificate of authenticity with the wrong dates from a website designed on MS Paint that knows its wares are intact? It has the wavy blue border. Does it really say intact on there? Oh yeah, Eye of Horus. Very fine condition, intact, some shipping. Like it's a listing on fucking Depop. This was $349, this Eye of Horus, one of the Eye of Horuses that Demi got. I could not find this video, but one of the original TikToks that I found when I was first hearing about this a few days ago, when this was all unfolding on Demi's Instagram, someone referred to how these cuneiform tablets are probably fake. Can't find the video. It's going to drive me insane. But they compared the cuneiform tablets to the ones that they made on gingerbread for the holidays. That sounds really fun. Can we do that? I don't know how to make cuneiform tablets. I don't know how to write it, but we'll figure it out. I just wanted to do a deep dive mainly on this topic because, I thought it was interesting the more that I found out about it, about, here's how we think that these are probably forgeries, because they show very smooth items, and that's not common in legitimate artifacts and things like that. Variety of other things, again, the details and things like that. And then also kind of really got me more aware of I knew that there was looting and stolen artifacts being sold. I'd never even really considered how, forgeries play into that and the world of which those two kind of benefit each other. All in all, I think I would hope that you would take away from this video that maybe you shouldn't buy artifacts for your private collection. But if you disagree with me and you think I have the right to own artifacts from a website called Museum Surplus, okay, you can then do your due diligence, find out what the provenance is, ask questions. Don't just hit, okay, Apple Pay sounds good, do your research on a topic, on a product, and especially on a potential antiquity. At the very least, you want to know you're not involving yourself in a stolen good. I think there is a potential legal ramifications if you do purchase stolen artifacts. At the very least, you're losing money regardless, whether it's fake or stolen, because eventually it'll be seized or you'll be asked to return it, which you should do if you're not a douche. Just please do your due diligence. I'm not worried about you guys doing this. Honestly, a list of things I'm worried about, you guys purchasing our antiquities is really not up there. I'm going to be honest. What I know of my audience, you guys don't strike me as the type. And that's not a negative thing or anything like that. I'm just like, I wanted to talk about this topic. This being Demi Lovato kind of puts a pop culture new age spin on it in a sense, because it's like Demi's fairly young and this is kind of potentially making this, the new hot new thing. That's really it. Did you hear about this from Demi's Instagram? Did you hear about the potential forgeries or stolen antiquities in general? What are your thoughts on private ownership of antiquities? I feel I've made myself very clear. Do you want to make cuneiform gingerbread cookies with me? That sounds fun. Can we do that? How do I do that? Let me know. Comment down below. Reminder, I have a podcast, the Swell Shenanigans Podcast. New episodes every Wednesday. Reminder, I have merch like this mug back here. It's not an antiquities, but maybe I'll start making little seals of authenticity for you guys. Do you want Swell merch? Shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd also like to support me on Patreon, they'll be listed down below. If you'd like to follow me on my social media, that'll be up here. And that's going to be it. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. I mean, I'm just trying to understand why anyone with money would look at a website like Museum Surplus and think, oh yes, I can trust them with my money. This 1998 website design, I can trust them in the year 2022 with my money and their antiquities.
Thank you, Audrey, Allen, Cameron, Christopher, Chris, Cody, Colton, Crash, PC, China, Devin, Dirty One, Dawn, Elliot, Evan, Feckles, Hopeless, Hollow, Incognito, Jacare, Joe, John M, Jordan, Joseph, Kenny, Kevin, Kim, Kristen, Lamb, Lex, Lisa, Luis, Matt O, Matthew S, Meme Lord, Michael J, Micah, Nathan, Nathaniel, Pat, Penn, Richard, Rob, Red, Robert, Ross, Sam, Serena, Skylar, Simon, Tasha, Timothy, Tom, Wendy, William, Zendry, Winter, Zwink.